The train station was chaos. Olivia Fairchild gripped the strap of her purse, her breath coming in short gasps as she scanned the departure board, her vision blurring. The overwhelming noise of rolling suitcases, hurried footsteps, and garbled announcements made her head spin. No, 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 this wasn't happening. Her flight had been canceled, and now her train ticket, her last hope of making it to the most important meeting of her career, was missing. She had it a moment ago. She was certain. But now, as she patted down her pockets and upturned her purse, panic clawed at her chest. She needed to get to Chicago, today. The edges of her vision darkened as her breathing grew more erratic. She tried to steady herself, but the room tilted. A strong, steady hand touched her shoulder. "Hey, take a deep breath," a deep voice said, calm and reassuring. She turned, her wide eyes meeting a pair of piercing blue ones. The man standing in front of her had dark brown hair, slightly tousled, and a presence so steady it made her exhale without realizing. "I can't," she stammered. "You're having a panic attack," he said gently. "Look at me. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Just follow me." She obeyed, inhaling shakily, then exhaling as he guided her through the motions. Slowly, the pounding in her chest eased. "There you go," he murmured. Her hands still trembled, but she managed to nod. "I lost my ticket," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He glanced around the floor, then crouched down. A second later, he picked up a crumpled piece of paper near the base of the bench behind her. "This it?" Her heart leapt. "Yes," she grabbed it, her fingers brushing his. "Oh my God, thank you so much." He smiled warm, kind. "No problem." That's when she noticed the little girl clinging to his leg, no older than 5, with big brown eyes identical to his. "Daddy," the girl asked, peering up at him. "I'm right here, sweetheart," he reassured her before glancing back at Olivia. "You sure you're okay?" The warmth of his concern made something in her chest tighten. She wasn't used to people checking on her like this. She was used to being the one in control, the one fixing problems. But this stranger had seen her unravel and hadn't judged, just helped. "I'm okay," she said, standing a little straighter. "Thank you." "Nathan Walker," he introduced himself, "and this is Lily." Olivia smiled at the little girl. "Hi, Lily." Lily gave a shy wave before burying her face in Nathan's leg. "Are you heading to Chicago?" Nathan asked. "Yes, important meeting," she said vaguely. She wasn't about to spill that she was the CEO of Fairchild Enterprises and that today's meeting could define the future of her company. Nathan nodded. "We are too, visiting family." The announcement for their train departure echoed over the intercom. "Come on, Lily," Nathan said, lifting his daughter effortlessly into his arms. "Let's get to our seats." Olivia hesitated before stepping forward. "I owe you for helping me back there. Can I buy you a coffee or something? Just to say thanks." Nathan looked surprised but smiled. "You don't owe me anything, but I won't say no to coffee." Lily giggled, and Olivia found herself grinning back. As they boarded the train together, Olivia had no idea that this chance encounter would change her life forever. The train glided smoothly along the tracks, the rhythmic hum of movement filling the space. Olivia sat across from Nathan and Lily in the small table section of the first-class cabin, a steaming cup of coffee resting between her hands. She'd bought him one too, despite his protests, and now he sipped it with a quiet nod of thanks. Lily sat beside him, her tiny hands wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate Olivia had ordered for her. The little girl beamed at the whipped cream on top, her excitement contagious. "You travel to Chicago often?" Nathan asked, leaning back slightly in his seat. "More than I'd like," Olivia admitted. "Work keeps me on the move." Nathan arched an eyebrow. "Sounds intense." She hesitated. Most people, upon learning who she was, either became intimidated or overly interested in what she could do for them. But Nathan didn't press, and something about his easy demeanor made her relax. "It is," she finally said, "but I like a challenge." His lips quirked slightly, his gaze assessing. "I can see that." Lily, clearly uninterested in adult conversation, swung her legs under the table and focused on her drink. "What about you?" Olivia asked, tilting her head. "You mentioned visiting family." Nathan nodded. "Yes, my parents live just outside the city. We try to visit when we can." His words were simple, but there was something in his tone, a careful selection of words, that made Olivia wonder. "Must be nice," she said, watching him. He chuckled. "Depends on the visit." She smiled, appreciating his honesty. Lily suddenly perked up. "Daddy, can I have a cookie?" Nathan glanced at her, then at Olivia. "You think the dining car has cookies?" Olivia glanced toward the aisle. "I can check." Before either of them could protest, she stood and made her way toward the dining car. The air was cooler here, the scent of brewed coffee and freshly baked goods lingering. She found a selection of treats and grabbed a chocolate chip cookie before returning. Lily's eyes lit up when Olivia placed the cookie in front of her. "Thank you," the little girl chirped. Nathan shot Olivia a look, one that was both appreciative and curious. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to." Lily broke the cookie in half and offered a piece to Olivia. The gesture caught her off guard. "Are you sure?" she asked gently. Lily nodded. Olivia took the small piece and nibbled on it, warmth spreading through her chest. Nathan watched the exchange, something unreadable passing over his features before he took another sip of his coffee. "So, tell me," Olivia said, shifting her attention back to him. "What do you do when you're not calming panicked strangers at train stations?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "I run a construction company." Surprise flickered through her. "Really?" "Yeah," he said. "Walker & Co. We specialize in high-end renovations." She leaned in slightly. "That sounds like a lot of work." "It is," he admitted, "but I like seeing something go from nothing to something great." Olivia could relate to that, the satisfaction of building something from the ground up. "Was it always what you wanted to do?" she asked. Nathan hesitated, then exhaled. "Not exactly. I used to work in corporate finance, but after Lily came along, I wanted something different, something that let me be more present." Olivia absorbed that, watching how his gaze softened when he looked at his daughter. "That's admirable," she said sincerely. Nathan shrugged, "Just priorities shifting." She understood that more than she cared to admit. The train continued its journey, the city skyline beginning to take shape in the distance. "Looks like we're almost there," Nathan noted. Olivia followed his gaze out the window. The thought of stepping back into her world, back into the pressure of meetings and expectations, suddenly felt heavier than before. "You have a big meeting, right?" Nathan asked, watching her. She nodded. "Yeah." "You'll do great." His confidence in her, despite knowing so little, sent a strange flicker of warmth through her. "Thanks," she said softly. As the train pulled into the station, passengers began gathering their things. Olivia reached for her bag, and Nathan adjusted Lily's jacket. They stepped onto the platform together, the crisp Chicago air greeting them. "This is us," Nathan said, nodding toward an exit. Olivia hesitated. Lily tugged on her father's sleeve. "Can we see Olivia again?" The question startled them both. Nathan looked at Olivia, something unreadable in his expression. "That's up to her," he said. Olivia glanced between them, her heart hammering in a way she didn't fully understand. She smiled. "I'd like that." Nathan pulled out his phone. "Here." She took it, entering her number before handing it back. "I'll hold you to it," he said with a knowing look. "Good," she replied. With one last smile, she turned toward her own exit, stepping back into the world she knew only this time. Something felt different. Olivia stared at her reflection in the mirror of her hotel suite, adjusting the delicate chain of her necklace. The city lights glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow over the elegant furnishings. The evening gala, an exclusive, high-stakes networking event, was exactly the kind of place where deals were made, alliances were forged, and reputations solidified. Normally, she thrived in these environments, but tonight, her thoughts kept drifting to something, or rather, someone else. Nathan. It had been a whirlwind since their train ride. She'd walked straight into back-to-back meetings, negotiations that had stretched through the afternoon. But even in the midst of it all, she'd caught herself checking her phone, half expecting, half hoping for a message. She wasn't used to distractions outside of work, to a man occupying space in her mind when she should be focused. And yet, Nathan's steady presence, his easy confidence, the way he reassured her when she was unraveling it lingered. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Her assistant, Evelyn, stepped inside. "The car is ready. Are you sure about this event? You've had a long day." Olivia nodded, slipping into her heels. "It's necessary." Evelyn gave her a knowing look, but said nothing. They both knew this gala was more than just socializing. It was an opportunity to finalize a partnership that could secure the future of Fairchild Enterprises. As they arrived at the venue, Olivia stepped onto the red-carpeted entrance, flashing a poised smile as cameras flashed. Inside, the ballroom was adorned with cascading chandeliers, the air rich with the scent of expensive champagne and polished ambition. She moved through the crowd effortlessly, exchanging pleasantries, shaking hands with CEOs, investors, and board members who all played a role in the intricate web of business. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him. Nathan. Standing near the bar, dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking completely at ease in a room full of power players. But what sent a ripple of shock through her was the man he was speaking to, Robert Lancaster, one of the wealthiest real estate moguls in the country. Nathan wasn't just visiting family, he was here for business. She approached, her heart beating faster than she cared to admit. "Nathan," she greeted, her voice smooth, controlled. He turned, surprise flickering across his features, before something else replaced it, something unreadable. "Olivia." Lancaster chuckled, glancing between them. "Take it you two know each other." Nathan's lips quirked slightly, something like that. Olivia folded her arms. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Likewise," he said, "but I suppose should have known a place like this is familiar territory for you." She tilted her head. "And for you." Lancaster clapped Nathan on the back. "Walker & Co. is working on one of my biggest projects. Nathan's company is the best in the business when it comes to high-end renovations." Olivia absorbed that. Nathan wasn't just a contractor. He was leading a company that worked with some of the most powerful names in real estate. "You never mentioned that," she said, meeting his gaze. "You never asked," he replied, his expression unreadable. Lancaster excused himself, leaving them alone amid the murmur of conversations and clinking glasses. "So you do business in my world," Olivia mused. Nathan exhaled, adjusting his cufflinks. "Try to keep a low profile." An unfamiliar sensation twisted inside her. "Why?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I don't care for the games that come with it." She studied him, seeing something in his expression that most people in this room never revealed honesty. "I get that," she admitted. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt charged, as if they were standing on the edge of something neither had anticipated. Then Nathan glanced at a passing waiter and grabbed 2 flutes of champagne, handing her one. "To unexpected meetings," he said. She took the glass, their fingers brushing for the briefest moment. To unexpected meetings. They stood there, surrounded by a sea of people, yet somehow, it felt like the rest of the room had faded. The gala shimmered around them, a blur of expensive jewels and murmured negotiations, but Olivia barely noticed. All she could see was Nathan, the way the candlelight reflected in his deep-set eyes, the way his presence steadied her in a way she didn't fully understand. She wasn't used to feeling off balance. But standing here, champagne glass in hand, staring into the gaze of a man who had already seen her at her most vulnerable, she felt something shift inside her. Nathan's voice was quiet but firm. "You don't seem like the type to enjoy these events." Olivia arched an eyebrow. "And what type do I seem like?" He studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Someone who prefers results over appearances." She tilted her head, unexpectedly intrigued. "You read people well." "It's necessary in my business," he admitted. "And maybe I just wanted to understand you." The words sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. She was used to people analyzing her, but always for their own gain. Nathan wasn't trying to work an angle. He was simply trying to see her. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut in. "Olivia." She turned, her posture instantly sharpening. Robert Sinclair, one of the most influential investors in the city, stood before her with a practiced smile. He had been circling Fairchild Enterprises for months, waiting for the perfect moment to either invest or, if she faltered, to strike. Nathan observed the interaction silently, his gaze unreadable. Sinclair extended a hand. "Hear you had quite the negotiation today." Olivia accepted the handshake, her grip firm. "You hear a lot of things." Sinclair chuckled, but his eyes glinted with sharp calculation. "Only what's worth knowing." He glanced briefly at Nathan before turning his attention back to Olivia. "I assume your deal went through." Olivia kept her expression impassive. "You know, don't discuss business at social events." Sinclair's smile didn't falter, but there was an unmistakable challenge in his tone. "Of course, though I do wonder if Fairchild Enterprises can afford to be selective right now." Nathan shifted beside her, subtle but protective. Olivia held Sinclair's gaze without flinching. "If you're looking for weakness, Robert, you'll have to search elsewhere." The older man studied her for a beat before offering a smooth nod. "Enjoy your evening." And then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of power players. Nathan exhaled, his voice low. "He doesn't seem like someone you'd trust." "I don't," Olivia admitted. "But in my world, keeping enemies close is necessary." Nathan's jaw tightened slightly. "That sounds exhausting." She let out a quiet breath, not realizing until now how much weight she carried on her shoulders. "It is." For a moment, neither of them spoke, the air between them thick with something unspoken. Then Nathan extended his hand. "Come on." She frowned slightly. "Where?" "You'll see." Something about the certainty in his voice made her follow without question. He led her through the lavish ballroom, out onto a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The night air was crisp, a welcome contrast to the heat of the event inside. The skyline stretched before them, glittering against the dark sky. Nathan leaned against the railing, exhaling slowly. "Better." She realized with a start that it was. Out here, away from the calculated glances and silent power struggles, she could breathe. She turned to him, her voice softer now. "You don't belong in that room, do you?" Nathan hesitated, then shook his head. Not really. And yet you're here. He glanced at her then, something flickering in his gaze. Because sometimes you go where you need to. Her pulse quickened, and where do you need to be? His gaze never wavered. Right now, here. The words settled deep in her chest. She had spent years building walls, ensuring no one could shake her focus, her control. And yet, in the span of a day, Nathan had done exactly that, not by pushing, not by demanding, but simply by being there. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of him despite the cool night air. You barely know me. Nathan's voice was steady. I know enough. Her breath hitched slightly. And what is it you think you know? His hand lifted, tracing a feather-light touch along the curve of her wrist. That you don't let people in easily. She swallowed. No. That you carry more than you should. She exhaled shakily. Maybe. And that, right now, you're trying to decide if this, whatever this is worth the risk. Her heart pounded, and what do you think? Nathan's thumb brushed against her skin, a touch so gentle it sent a shiver down her spine. I think some risks are worth taking. The city stretched before them, endless and bright, but Olivia could only focus on the man standing in front of her. She had spent years choosing caution. Tonight, she chose something else. She leaned in, closing the inches between them, and Nathan met her halfway. The first touch of his lips was slow, deliberate, as if he was giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she deepened the kiss, her hands finding the lapels of his jacket, anchoring herself to him. He let out a quiet sound, one that sent warmth pooling low in her stomach. His hand slid to her waist, steady and sure, pulling her closer. For the first time in a long time, Olivia wasn't thinking about strategy, about control. She was simply feeling. When they finally pulled apart, her breath was uneven, her pulse racing. Nathan's forehead rested lightly against hers. We should probably get back. She didn't move, probably. Neither of them made a move to step away. Nathan's voice was quieter now. This changes things. Olivia looked up at him, her walls lowering just enough. I know. And for once, she wasn't afraid. The night air still clung to Olivia's skin as she stepped back into the gala, her pulse steady but her mind anything but. She had never been the type to get swept up in moments to let emotion override logic. But standing on that terrace with Nathan, feeling the warmth of his touch, had unraveled something deep inside her. She wasn't sure she wanted to put it back together. Nathan walked beside her, his presence grounding yet electrifying all at once. He didn't reach for her again, didn't press for anything more, but the weight of what had happened between them lingered in the charged air. Before she could fully process it, a familiar voice cut through the hum of conversation. Olivia, there you are. Her business partner, Daniel Pierce, approached with a measured stride. He was impeccably dressed, as always, his sharp eyes scanning her with quiet assessment. I was beginning to think you disappeared. His tone was smooth, but there was an unmistakable undertone of expectation. Olivia straightened her shoulders, slipping back into the polished composure she had spent years perfecting. Just stepped out for some air. Daniel's gaze flicked briefly to Nathan, then back to her. He didn't ask, but the question was there in his silence. Nathan, to his credit, didn't bristle or step away. He simply watched, his expression unreadable. Daniel continued, "We need to solidify the final terms with the Lancaster Group. Robert hinted that he wants reassurance before committing." Olivia nodded, already shifting gears. "I'll handle it." Nathan's voice came quietly beside her. "Should check on Lily anyway." She turned to him, something twisting in her chest at the mention of his daughter. "Talk later." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of something more. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Yes. And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd with the same quiet confidence he carried in every moment. Daniel studied her, his scrutiny razor-sharp. Did I interrupt something? Olivia picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, taking a measured sip before answering. Nothing that concerns business. His lips pressed into a thin line. You don't usually mix personal with professional. She met his gaze, unflinching. I still don't. Daniel didn't argue, but the look he gave her said he wasn't convinced. The remainder of the evening was a blur of calculated conversation and strategic maneuvering. Olivia secured the agreement with Lancaster, ensuring Fairchild Enterprises remained in a position of strength. She played the role she had perfected over the years, sharp, composed, always one step ahead. But the entire time, her mind drifted to Nathan. By the time she returned to her hotel, exhaustion tugged at her limbs, but sleep felt impossible. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. Minutes passed before she finally gave in, typing a message. Can I see you tomorrow? The response came almost immediately. Name a time and place. The next morning, Olivia found herself standing outside a small cafe in the quieter part of the city. It wasn't the sort of place she usually frequented, no high-end business meetings, no carefully curated clientele. Just warm coffee, the scent of fresh pastries, and an atmosphere that felt oddly inviting. Nathan was already there, seated at a corner table with Lily beside him. She was coloring in a small notebook, her tiny hands gripping a crayon with intense focus. When Olivia approached, Lily looked up and grinned. Olivia. Something in her chest softened at the sound of her name from the little girl's lips. Good morning, Lily. Nathan stood, pulling out a chair for her without a word. She sat, glancing at him. You're very punctual. He gave a slight shrug. Figured you might change your mind. Her fingers curled around the coffee cup in front of her. I didn't. A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with all the things they weren't saying. Lily, oblivious to the tension, held up her drawing. It's a house with lots of flowers. Daddy says it's important to make things beautiful. Olivia smiled. I think he's right. Nathan watched her, something unreadable in his gaze. She makes sure I don't forget that. There was something about the way he said it, something unspoken about the way Lily anchored him, reminded him of what mattered. Olivia traced the rim of her cup, exhaling slowly. I don't do this. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Do what? She met his eyes. Let people in. He studied her for a moment before speaking. Why now? She didn't have an easy answer. Maybe it was the way he had seen her at her worst and hadn't judged. Maybe it was the way Lily looked at him with absolute trust and how he carried that responsibility with quiet strength. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to prove anything. I don't know, she admitted, but I don't want to walk away from it. Nathan's expression didn't shift, but something in his posture did something that told her he had been hoping for those words. You don't have to, he said simply. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was just a fact. Lily tugged at Olivia's sleeve. Are you going to come see the park with us? Olivia glanced at Nathan, uncertain. He gave a small nod. If you want to. She hesitated for only a second before smiling at Lily. I'd love to. And just like that, something shifted. Not with a dramatic moment or a sweeping gesture, but with something simple, something real. A choice. One she was finally ready to make. The park stretched wide before them, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun. Children ran across the playground, their laughter filling the air, while couples strolled along the winding paths. Olivia hadn't expected to be here, sitting on a bench beside Nathan as Lily played on the swings, but she wasn't regretting it either. Nathan leaned back, stretching one arm along the back of the bench, his gaze following his daughter. "She's been asking about you," he admitted. Olivia turned to him, surprised. "Really?" "She likes you," he said simply. "Kids don't pretend. If they like someone, they just do." There was something about the certainty in his words that made her chest tighten. She had spent so much of her life navigating people who had hidden intentions, ulterior motives. Lily's affection was straightforward, unfiltered, and for the first time, Olivia wasn't sure how to process being fully accepted without conditions. "She's a great kid," Olivia said, watching as Lily dragged another child toward the jungle gym, already making friends. Nathan exhaled, his expression softening. "Yeah, she is." A silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that settled when words weren't needed. Olivia let herself enjoy the ease of simply sitting beside him, of not having to command the moment or steer a conversation into something strategic. Then Nathan spoke again, his voice lower this time. "You're different outside of that world." She turned her head slightly. "What do you mean?" He didn't look at her right away, as if carefully considering his words. "At the gala, you were sharp, controlled, like you were wearing armor. But here," his gaze finally met hers, "you don't seem like you need it." She inhaled slowly, fingers tightening slightly on her lap. "That world requires armor." "I get that," he said, "but does it ever get exhausting?" She let out a quiet breath, "More than I let on." Nathan studied her for a long moment. "You don't have to be like that with me." Something about the way he said it made her heart beat a little faster. He wasn't asking her to change, wasn't telling her she was too much or not enough. He was just giving her the space to be. Lily came running toward them then, her cheeks flushed from the afternoon sun. "Can we get ice cream?" Nathan chuckled, ruffling her hair. "You just had cookies this morning." Lily pouted dramatically. That was forever ago. Olivia smiled, standing. "I think ice cream sounds like a great idea." Nathan shook his head in mock exasperation. "You're supposed to be on my side." She gave him a sideways glance. "Where's the fun in that?" They walked toward the nearby ice cream stand, Lily skipping ahead, already rattling off flavors she wanted to try. Nathan walked beside Olivia, their hands brushing briefly as they moved. Neither of them pulled away. As they reached the stand, Olivia watched as Nathan knelt to Lily's level, patiently listening as she debated between chocolate and strawberry. He didn't rush her, didn't try to persuade her, he just let her make her choice. It was such a simple thing, but it told Olivia everything she needed to know about the kind of man he was. They sat on a low stone wall, Lily happily eating her ice cream while Olivia and Nathan shared quiet conversation. The moment was easy, unforced, and Olivia found herself wishing it didn't have to end. Eventually, though, the day began to fade, and reality nudged its way back in. They walked back toward Nathan's car, the unspoken knowledge that their time together was coming to a close settling between them. Lily yawned, rubbing at her eyes. Nathan lifted her effortlessly into his arms, settling her against his chest as she mumbled something incoherent. Olivia hesitated beside him. "Had a good time today." Nathan looked at her, his eyes searching. "I did too." She shifted slightly, glancing toward the car. "I don't know what this is, where it goes." Nathan let out a slow breath. "I'm not asking you to have an answer." She swallowed. "I don't want to hurt either of you." "You won't," he said firmly, "not unless you walk away." Her throat tightened. "Nathan." He reached out, his fingers grazing her hand. "I'm not asking for forever, Olivia. I'm just asking for a chance." She looked at him, the weight of everything she had built, everything she had protected pressing against the fragile hope that had been growing inside her. Then she exhaled, and she nodded. Nathan's expression didn't change much, but there was something in his eyes, something warm, something certain that told her she had made the right choice. He leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her forehead before stepping back. "I'll call you." And just like that, the moment ended. But this time, Olivia knew it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Months passed, and with them, change. Olivia found herself balancing both worlds, the one she had built through years of hard work, and the one that Nathan had quietly, steadily become a part of. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. They navigated challenges together. Business deals, late-night phone calls, weekends spent with Lily at the park, evenings where Olivia let herself be vulnerable in ways she never had before. And then, one evening, as they stood on a rooftop overlooking the city skyline, Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught. "I know you don't need grand gestures," he said, his voice steady. "I know you don't do things just because they're expected. So I'm not asking this because it's what people do. I'm asking because I want forever with you." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was elegant, timeless just like her. "Marry me," he said, "not because it's the next step, not because it's expected, but because we choose each other, every day." Olivia felt something break open inside her. Fear, hesitation, it all melted away. She didn't need to think. She already knew the answer. "Yes," she whispered. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that sealed everything they had built together. As the city lights twinkled around them, Olivia knew one thing for certain. She had spent her life chasing success, fighting for everything she had. But this love, this family was the greatest thing she had ever built.